Good morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Madison. This is a community where curious seekers gather to explore spiritual, ethical, and social issues in an accepting and nurturing environment. Unitarian Universalism supports the freedom of conscience of each individual, as together we seek to be a force for good in the world. My name is Karin Bringleson, and on behalf of the congregation, I welcome all of you. We are a welcoming congregation, so whoever you are on your journey, we celebrate your presence among us. This would be a great time to silence your cell phones, if you happen to have them. And we will now join together in just a few moments of silence for contemplation, for meditation, and for prayer as we become fully present with ourselves and with one another. Hymn number 361 is our first hymn for the day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Let us rise in all the ways that we do and sing with gusto. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in.
Good morning. My name is Jim Jager. I'm an affiliated community minister with First Unitarian Society. In my day job, I'm a hospice chaplain with Heartland Hospice. I invite you to turn to reading number 443 in the back of your hymnal. This, along with a number of the other hymns and readings, were written by the Reverend Kenneth Patton, who's going to be part of the subject of our conversation this morning. I will read the regular type, if you would please read the italicized portion. We arrive out of many singular rooms, walking over the branching streets.
We come to be assured that brothers and sisters surround us, to restore their images upon our eyes.
We enlarge our voices in common speaking and singing. Our eyes reclaim the remembered faces. Their voices stir the surrounding air.
The warmth of their hands assures us, and the gladness of our soul remains.
This is the reason of cities, of homes, of assemblies and houses of worship. It is good to be with one another. And for our chalice lighting this morning, these words from Dr. Albert Schweitzer. At times our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. Now I invite you to turn to your neighbor and share friendly greetings this beautiful summer morning.
All of the young people and those who are young at heart are welcome to come forward for a message for all ages. Hello,
Well, hello.
Batman.
That's an entrance.
I don't know if I can. Do you? Yeah. Yes. Have any of you met Pinky before? Yes. Yes. So Pinky wanted to come visit you today because Pinky thinks that they are in this book.
Yeah, see if you can see Pinky.
Yeah, we'll see if
Hello, Pinky.
Pinky is in this book somewhere. I don't know, you might need to help Pinky stay up. This book is called It's Okay to Be Different. Have any of you read this?
Yes.
Once I hear a yes. It's very popular. Oh, well, it's related to what we're doing today.
Teacher at school used to read it to me.
Oh, your teacher every
every
day.
day.
Well, the
Wow.
first page says it's okay to be missing a tooth or 2 or 3. Has anyone lost any teeth lately?
I've lost 7.
7,
She's very busy.
2.
2.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I think you're winning.
I
with
th-
7.
How old were you when you started losing teeth?
6.
6?
I was about like,
Maybe 5?
I don't
In
know,
there somewhere.
3, 6.
6.
Oh.
It's okay to need some help. This has a dog.
There's Pinky.
It's okay to have a different nose. Here, Pinky, you can see yourself.
That actually is so wrong.
This pink elephant has a very long nose, and Pinky has not such a long nose.
Not too long at all.
It's okay to be a different color.
Oh, snap. That is such a wrong color for a zebra.
What about you?
Not rainbow,
That's
but black and
well, Pinky's pink. What about you, Doug? What are you?
I'm also kind of pink.
You have
Off
some pink
yes.
in you? Yeah.
Yes, I am tan.
Yeah. You and I have similar colors of skin.
Right. I am very Scandinavian. I can't be out in the sun for very long.
Right.
Or else I get a
Then you
sunburn.
really get pink.
Yes.
Yes.
I sure do.
It's okay to have no hair. It's okay, Doug.
I like that one. I like this book a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's because you're bald.
Exactly.
In the front of your head.
In the front of my head, not all the
Now
way.
this one says it's okay to have big ears.
Just like me.
You have
It's
great
okay,
ears.
Pinky.
Pinky has wonderful
Pinky
ears.
has big ears.
Good for listening.
It's okay to have wheels. Do you know anyone who uses wheels to get around?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Counselors at my
Yeah,
camp do.
yeah.
Our cousin.
Your cousin, yes. Yes.
One of my friends.
It's okay to be small, medium, large, and extra large.
Or fat. I'm large.
You're
It's
large.
also okay to be fat.
It's okay to be fat. That's right. It's okay to wear glasses.
Oh, snap. Those are like you did a
Now, none of you are wearing glasses, but
We are, yes.
We are.
We are.
how many people out there are wearing glasses? Raise your hand.
You are wearing glasses.
Yeah. It's okay to not wear glasses, too.
Exactly.
It's okay to talk about your feelings. And then it says prr, prr, grrr, and rawr.
so.
Yeah, lions don't really say. Well, I have not met that many lions, so I don't know. It's okay to eat macaroni and cheese in the bathtub. Okay, raise your
No.
hand out there if you've ever eaten macaroni and cheese in the bathtub.
Or if you would like to eat
Right,
macaroni
well,
and cheese in the bathtub, that's
Yeah,
probably
there's some people here.
I'm getting ideas from this book.
You
actually.
are. It's okay to say no to bad things, Doug. Like eating macaroni and cheese in the bathtub.
I know. Oh well.
It's okay to come from a different place. What's that say?
I don't know. What does that say? What do you think that says? It's from another planet, another planetary.
Hi,
Yeah.
I'm an alien,
Good
says
translation.
the Martian. Yep. It's okay to be embarrassed. Oh, I've been embarrassed before. Have you been embarrassed before, Doug?
Very recently, in
Yes.
the last few minutes, as a matter of fact.
Well, it's okay to come in last. Have you ever heard that message before?
Slow and steady wins the race.
Slow and steady wins the race, but that's still winning. It's okay not to win the race, even. Isn't that something? And this says it's okay to dance by yourself. Well, that's a good thing, because I do that.
If he jumps up in the air, he's probably going to land on his face and break his really cool rock.
Someone has rock star glasses. Here's a picture of a worm in a house that says it's okay to have a pet worm.
Snap.
Does anyone have a pet worm?
I have like 100.
Hundreds of pet worms.
Nice.
Yes, I believe it.
That works.
They are really good for composting. You don't have
don't?
any pet worms. It's okay to not have pet worms,
That's
too.
right.
It's okay to be proud of yourself.
It is really okay to be proud of yourself, yes.
It's okay to have different moms. And it's okay to have different dads. Do you have any different dads or different moms in your life?
I have a lot of moms and dads in my life, yes, and they're all different, absolutely. So that makes sense.
This says it's okay to be adopted.
That looks like a bear.
Yeah.
Kangaroo. That's a kangaroo with the dog.
It's okay to have an invisible friend.
That's called an imaginary friend.
And it's okay to do something nice for somebody.
Yeah. But they are
Like share your food. And
fat.
that is what we are going to do later. We're going to be sharing some food today after worship. We're going to be eating together. Yeah. It's okay to lose your mittens, and it's okay to get mad. It's okay to do something nice for yourself, like
a
eat
lot of
a
ice cream.
huge ice cream cone.
That is not healthy.
And it's okay to help a squirrel collect nuts. Now that's different, Doug.
I like that. I like the squirrel's outfit, too.
It's okay to have different kinds of friends. And it's okay to make a wish. You have a dog?
Dog?
I have 2 dogs.
Awesome. 1 dog, 2 dogs, 1 dog. I'm going to tell you one last thing. It's okay to be different. You are special and important just because of being who you are. So thank you for being here today. This is a day where you get to go to summer fun. So you are going to go to class while we sing our next song to you.
Number 308, Blessings of the Earth and Sky. Thanks
Thank
for being
you.
part of
And
our
if you want to
story.
say goodbye to Pinky, you can.
Let us rise in all the ways that we do to sing together hymn number 308, The Blessings of the Earth and Sky. And if you don't want to rise, that's okay. The blessings of the earth and sky upon our friendly house do lie. The rightness of a master's art has blessed with grace its every part. The warmth of many hands is strewn in human blessing on this stone. The wind upon the lakes and hills performs its native rituals. The worship of our human toil brings sacrament from sun and soil. With words and music we the earth in nature's wonders seek our worth. Here we restore ancestral dreams enshrined in floor and wall and beam, a monument wherein we build that their high purpose be fulfilled, a tool to help our children prove an earth of promise and of love.
Our reading this morning is from something called the Dictionary of Unitarian and Universalist Biography. You actually find this at the UUA website, and it has biographies of lots of people who have stood out in history as Unitarians or Universalists. This is the entry for Kenneth Leo Patton. Kenneth Leo Patton, August 25th, 1911 to December 25th, 1994, identified as one of the major poets and a prophet of contemporary liberal religion, was a voice for poetic naturalistic humanism at a time when most humanists were defining a religion of reason. Minister and scholar, and one of my favorite professors, David Bumbaugh, has summed up Patton's work. It was he who taught a monochrome rationalism how to sing. It was he who taught a stumble-footed humanism how to dance. It was he who cried, "Look," and taught our eyes to see the glory in the ordinary. In 1942, Patton, a confirmed humanist, applied for the open pulpit of the First Unitarian Society of Madison, Wisconsin. He was called and served until January of 1949. He helped the society obtain the services of famed architect Frank Lloyd Wright for the design of a new building. While in Madison, he published 3 books: Strange Seed, 1946, a volume of lyric poetry, Beyond Doubt, 1946, and Hello Man. In a radio talk, a program called Religion for Today on a local radio station here in Madison, Patton casually said that he would like to resign from the white race and become a colored man. To his surprise, this catapulted him into notoriety. A national magazine asked him to explore the extent of racial prejudice in Chicago by attempting to integrate restaurants, hotels, country clubs, and real estate. After being repeatedly turned away when he averted himself a Negro or when he was accompanied by people of color, Patton visited an interracial housing project. There he found swarms of Negro and white children playing together, families of all colors living side by side. He reported in a personal experience of brotherhood in the Unitarian Christian Register. In those 2 days, I became colored in the more profound sense than mere verbal profession can ever consummate. I have crossed the line through a deeply emotional experience, and I have no desire to cross back. Where I now am is where every honest man will be and will one day have to be.
Sometimes I think about the ones that we've replaced, all the millions underneath the burn and waste. And I get sad because of course we'll be the same, all of history collapsing in its wake. Oh, maybe it's enough that I have laid here. Maybe it's enough that I am known inside my head, and maybe it's enough to know that we were here together, and that we are the ones, we are the ones, we are the ones for now. I heard that someday when they look up at the night, they'll see nothing but a black and starless sky. And they'll tell stories of some old and callow time, claiming spectacles of brilliant burning lights. Oh, maybe it's enough that I am laid here. Maybe it's enough that I have known inside my head, and maybe it's enough to know that we were here together, and that we are the ones, we are the ones, we are the ones for now. So maybe this is what it takes to realize I am grateful just that I have been alive. And I'll be happy if I look back on my life, been a sister, been a mother, been a wife. Oh, maybe it's enough that I have laid here. Maybe it's enough that I have known inside my head, and maybe it's enough to know that we are here together, and that we are the ones, we are the ones, we are the ones for now.
My reflection this morning was the product of a class that I was taking at Meadville Lombard Theological School several years ago, where we were asked to write a paper about some incident involving racial justice involving our home congregations. I sat down with Michael Schuler to seek some ideas, and he mentioned to me this episode with Kenneth Patton that I'm going to talk about today, and about the fact that we did have some material in our archives here to get me started. It took me on a quest that ended up writing the paper for the school, an article that was published in the UU Journal of History, and this sermon. And so it happens again. America woke up 2 weeks ago to news that there had been yet another mass shooting. In fact, 2 of them, one in Dayton, Ohio, and the other in El Paso, Texas. While the shootings are still under investigation, there is evidence that the El Paso killer may have been motivated by antipathy to Mexican immigrants and may have been influenced by statements of President Trump in his ongoing verbal feud with several members of Congress who are persons of color. This came after weeks of back and forth between the president and his political opponents over allegations of racism and white supremacy. Most recently, there were statements that if the president's opponents on the issues of immigration didn't like his policies, they could just go back where they came from. The old America love it or leave it trope that those of us who came of age during the Vietnam War disputes remember all too well. The demand is even more ironic, of course, given that all four of the Congress members are United States citizens, with three of them being native born and all elected by their constituents by significant margins. These demands, namely that persons of minority ethnic and racial backgrounds are not entitled to the same rights of free speech and the right to criticize the president as those of the majority white race in this country, are not a new phenomenon. In fact, it's been suggested in some anti-immigrant circles that these different, darker-skinned immigrants should not be permitted to enter or remain in the United States at all. If one studies the history of immigration and nativism in the United States, among the groups that have been officially excluded, never mind those who have suffered through simply not inadvertent, but certainly intentional but not obvious discrimination, included the Chinese and those identified as Mongoloids. The ostensible purpose for this exclusion was that these were inferior races whose presence among us would harm our country and culture and therefore must be kept out. I've got a dry mouth this morning, so I'm going to be drinking quite a bit of water. Race, as W.E.B. Du Bois reminded us in The Souls of Black Folk, is the single greatest challenge to face the United States in the 20th century. Christian minister and anti-racism activist Reverend Jim Wallace refers to racism as America's original sin. The history of slavery and segregation, our genocide against the Native American people, and our current controversies relating to the immigration of non-Europeans into the United States tells us that we have not met that challenge very well. The birther claims about President Obama, the recent attacks on Representative Cummings and the people of Baltimore, as well as the attacks on the so-called Squad, the collective nickname for the 4 Congress members, are part and parcel of the same effort to deny the humanity of persons of color in our society. And yet, what is meant by race still eludes us. At times in our history, particularly in the Jim Crow era in the South, legislators and others were bedeviled when they tried to determine what level of blackness was sufficient to subject one to the legal discrimination of the law. In the North, what level of the perception of non-whiteness was enough to prompt a prospective landlord to refuse to rent or a retail establishment to refuse to serve particular individuals. In any study of racial segregation, it is remarkable to me the lengths to which people would go to identify those who are deemed worthy of being discriminated against. In some parts of the South, for example, just one drop would determine if a person was considered a Negro or colored rather than white. Of course, all of this has become more confused in recent years as we have begun to decode the human genome so that we can discern from a swab from an individual's cheek where our ancestors came from. Individuals who take these tests are often surprised to learn that they possess very high levels of DNA from racial groups to which they have no perception of belonging, or that their distant ancestors may have come from Africa if they perceive themselves to be white, or are Europeans if they perceive themselves to be black. This kind of knowledge may set much of what we identify as racial identity on its head. A couple of years ago, my wife and I did the National Geographic genogram test for our families and learned that our distant ancestors originated in East Central Africa. Both my mother and father's side of the family crossed the Red Sea and went through Central Asia and from there to Europe. It appears that part of my father's side of the family returned to Persia, while most of my mother's side ended up in Western Europe. Now remember, this was about 15,000 years ago. More recent tests show even greater ability to fine-tune these findings. The question of race has been a challenge to others as well, including members of the Unitarian Universalist religious movements. One of the goals of the Unitarian Universalist Association is how it and its member congregations become anti-racist, anti-oppressive, multicultural organizations. And while the framing of this question is relatively recent, our dealing with it goes back to the earliest days of our movement. This morning, however, I want to look at a more recent episode in that story involving this congregation, the First Unitarian Society of Madison. In the fall of 1947, Reverend Kenneth Patton, a relatively young minister here at First Unitarian, delivered a series of radio talks, which also became sermons, on a local program called Religion for Today. These discourses brought the question of racial identity into the public conversation, both in Madison and beyond. In one of these broadcasts and sermons, Patton announced to his audience that he was resigning from the white race. Now, while Madison is perceived as a liberal Mecca to some, or 68 square miles surrounded by reality, including according to its detractors, it has had and continues to have its share of racial issues. In recent years, at least as of 2005, its African American population has stood at about 7%. I'm not sure what it was in Patton's time. There were numerous neighborhoods subject to racially restrictive covenants. African Americans then and later reported covert and overt housing and employment discrimination. Even today, housing patterns remain somewhat segregated, especially for lower income minority populations, which now include significant Hmong and Hispanic communities. While the official biography on the UUA website, which I just read from, describes the reference of Patton's resignation from the white race as a casual comment, a closer reading of the actual transcripts of the broadcast demonstrates a carefully considered attack by Patton on the racism which he observed not only in Madison but in the wider world. Furthermore, newspaper accounts at the time noted that Patton had sent out press releases the day before the first of these broadcasts describing the talk he intended to present. This was no casual comment by Reverend Patton. The first broadcast was on September 14th of 1947, and it was entitled Declaring for Color. In that talk, Patton refers to Sinclair Lewis's novel King Blood's Royal, the story of a prominent white banker in a mid-sized Minnesota city who discovers while researching his family's ancestry that he is part Negro. And I'm going to be using some of the language of the time here, just so you're aware. So after struggling with the implications of this newfound racial identity, Kingsblood ultimately discloses his ancestry and, quote, joins the Negro people. This book prompted Patton to reflect on the American Indian ancestry in his own family. He calculated that he was 132nd Native American, and what exactly that idea of race meant to him. While not rejecting the concept of race in general, he asked, is there any such thing as a white race? He then describes how what some call the white race is simply another race of color, just as much as the so-called colored races. But he then goes further. Declaring himself increasingly disgusted by the behavior of the so-called whites, he decides, based on his 132nd American Indian heritage, to declare in favor of what color I have and join the colored people. He sees himself crossing the line in the other direction and identifying with what we now call people of color. He then explored what this might mean in practical terms. In those days, Clergy were entitled to a pass that allowed them travel for one-half fare on the railroads. But to do this, they needed to declare their race on the application. Henceforth, Patton planned to declare himself as colored. When he sought to buy property, he said he would identify himself as colored and then, quote, yell long and hard if denied the opportunity to purchase. He goes on to describe other acts of advocacy, including formation of the United Colored Peoples of the World to advocate for all people of color around the world. At the conclusion of the broadcast, Patton invited people who wanted to join his new organization to contact the First Unitarian Society. He also declared, just as the world cannot exist half slave and half free, it cannot long endure half white and half colored. But we can unite as colored people and help promote the true brotherhood of man. Again, Patton's language. Apparently, the broadcast sparked a response, both positive and negative, from the public at large. It's sometimes covering that people listen to us enough as ministers to have some impact on the community. While support from Patton appeared substantial, outside white supremacist organizations attempting to gain a foothold in Wisconsin called him a mongrelizer, a betrayer of tradition, and heaven help us, a Marxist. For Patton, these attacks validated the position he was taking. His broadcast and sermon the following week, Patton pursued the topic of race further. In this talk, he challenged the very concept of race. He said, I have resigned from the white race because there is no such thing as a white race. I have only resigned from a myth, for the whole idea of a white race is a lot of silly nonsense, and who wants to belong to nonsense. He argues that by resigning from the white race, you will be able to be a member of one simple human race. He contended that all of us are colored in some fashion, and that to talk about a white race is to talk about a lie. In the remainder of the second talk, Patton advocated strongly for the proposition that the way to address issues of racism and racial prejudice is to attack the notion of whiteness head on, arguing that in reality we are all to one degree or another colored, and that this is the height of hubris for some of us to exalt our whiteness as a way of obtaining advantage, what we now refer to as white privilege. To act as whites were doing, attacking the security and self-respect of persons of color and subjecting them to abuse, poverty, and discrimination was, in Patton's view, a crime against all common decency and humanity. About a month later, Patton returned to this theme once again, this time proposing what he called a program for equality. This program suggested concrete actions that we could take to defeat racism in our church, community, and the wider world. Among these actions were: adopt the belief that race ideas are myths and that your color makes you no worse or no better than any other person. Actively seek friends from other races. Try to find colored people to join all white churches. If those churches resist, then leave and join a black church. Promote equality in the factory and the unions. Challenges ministers who are members of service clubs which discriminate to work within those clubs for integration, both racially as well as on a gender basis. He called for active efforts to integrate housing and integrating the teachers into the Madison schools. He concludes this presentation with a call to action. If we won't change our own ways, how will they be changed? As related by Mark Morrison Reed in his book, Black Pioneers in a White Denomination, these broadcasts gained notoriety for Patton. He became a public figure. He was invited to Chicago to assist in efforts to highlight discrimination in housing and public accommodations. With photographer and journalist from one of the major picture magazines, this would probably at the time have been either Life or Look, he and a team of black activists would try to enter public accommodations and purchase or rent real estate. These teams were able to demonstrate much overt discrimination in the North as well as the South. In fact, the article was never published in one of the mainstream publications. Rather, it was published in the Christian Register, which was the official publication of the American Unitarian Association. Reflecting on his experience in Chicago, Patton observed, "I had thought I knew what it was like to be a Negro. Hadn't I read all of the books on the Negro problem and the sociology of prejudice? But now I begin to see that no white man can know what it is to be one of the marked group. He cannot experience a lifetime of frustration, of blocked hopes and ambitions, the heartache of a blighted childhood, and the humiliation of undeserved repression and ostracism." He concludes, "I have crossed the line through a deeply emotional experience, and I have no desire to cross back. Where I am now is where every honest man will one day have to be." Patton continued his ministry in Madison for 2 more years. He remained a strong advocate for racial justice, calling out local institutions like the University of Wisconsin Medical School for racial bias in the admission of African American medical students. In 1949, Patton accepted a call to be the senior minister of the Universalist Charles Street Meeting House in Boston. In this position, he became the leader of the new Universalist movement. His particular emphasis was the development of worship materials, many of which are found in our Singing the Living tradition, and a few of which we shared this morning. So what should we think of Patton's racial arguments today? Quite clearly, for their time, these claims were provocative. It was the height of Jim Crow in the South and actual, if not legal, segregation in the North. If the reason for discriminatory treatment of blacks and persons of color related solely to perceived racial differences, then an argument that racial difference was a myth or nonsense should carry a great deal of weight. If indeed it could be demonstrated that racial differences do not really exist, then perhaps racism, prejudice, and discrimination would simply go away. Unfortunately, as we all know, history teaches us that there is more to it than that. We must accept that race remains a strong and potent force for division and hatred in the United States and the world. It has social and economic as well as biological aspects. White privilege is not just a matter of genetic attributes, but also positions of social, political, and economic power, whether sought or unsought, in society. The dominant white group benefits from distinctions based on perceived racial differences. These differences have been and continue to be used by economic elites to play off different oppressed groups, including white workers, who might otherwise make common cause with people of color to assert their shared political and economic interests. Whether or not the notion of a white race is nonsense, as Reverend Patton asserted, it is still a powerful force supporting injustice in the world. Racism is a cancer that eats at the body of our country and our culture. It prevents individuals from realizing their full human potential or living out their dreams. Racism crushes the spirit and snuffs out hope. It is the defining issue of human relations in our times. However, as we learn about DNA and genetic inheritance, the less justification there will be for anyone to claim that certain racial characteristics have anything to do with one's individual worth and dignity. In my more optimistic moments, I can hope that we will see how closely related we all are, and perhaps Reverend Patton's dream of a single human race, shared by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., will be one step closer to reality. I now invite you to participate in this morning's offertory.
Who can know the mysteries that make us who we are? Is a man both strong and brave? start with something new. Help me see the part of me that lives inside of you. Every nation, every tongue, and every point of view, red and yellow, black and white, of every shade and hue. Maybe we are different, maybe not, who knows what's true. So help me see the part of me that lives inside of you. And I will help you see the part of you that lives in me.
Thank you so much. We are grateful for all the acts of generosity and abundance that are part of our congregation. We thank you for your generosity in this morning's offering. We are also grateful for those who serve us in various ministries this morning to help us be a community. We are grateful for the ministry of our lay minister, Ann Smiley, for our greeters, Claire Box and Tom Dolmage, for our ushers, Pamela McMullen, Brian Chinas, Dorit Bergen, and Robin Downs. We are grateful for the Ministry of Hospitality and Coffee Making with Eleni and Franz Musared Varga, and Karen Rose Gredler will be our staffer of the welcome table, and our pulpit palms were cared for by Betty Evanson. This is an important Sunday for us to share some of our service with each other, and I'd like to invite Tim Corden to come and tell us a little bit about how to get involved today in Service Sunday. Welcome, Tim.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be up here and just looking at this beloved community, which I'm filled with gratitude to be a part of, because from the food haulers, let's give the food haulers a hand. I'm sure they can hear us in the kitchen. We're going to have a great lunch. After lunch, feel free to mingle and stay. We're going to be breaking into groups, thinking about how to beautify and keep this beloved community as beautiful as possible. So I have a few things I want to say about that. One is thank you, staff, for supporting this project. Thank you, food haulers. Thank you, ministry teams. The ministry teams have displays out there, so when you can take a break from your cleaning job or after lunch before you leave, view what some of the ministry teams are showing us. In particular, I want to say that the Moses team has a petition drive. They're trying to get Governor Evers to work even harder to release people that should have been released from our prisons long ago. So if you can stop by the Moses team. Our carpooling project team, part of the Sustainable Ministry team, has a beautiful display of ways that we can get here. The UUSC, there's a display about how to keep the Guest at Our Table program going. We're going to need some new blood in that program or else it might leave. And then, of course, the global climate strike efforts. Lots of us are getting involved trying to promote the September 20th global climate strike. So there's displays you can view when you're taking breaks. The supply station for cleaning supplies, vacuums and stuff is all at the back of the Landmark Auditorium. You'll also find information there. If you don't have a job yet or want to sign up for a job, you can go there. I want to introduce the Service Saturday team. They may not be in the house because they're busy getting ready for Service Saturday, but we have Harry Carnes, Rini Uhardi, Ann Smiley, and myself. If you have any questions, if you need help, just grab one of us and we'll help you. Have fun. There's pictures will be taken for social media and such. If you don't want your picture taken, please let the photographer know. That's Ann Smiley today. Any of you are welcome to take pictures as well and send them to me. There's also a little sign back at our social justice ministry team tables that says Global Climate Strike 9/20 or September 20th. And we're encouraging people to take pictures with that and send it out and have a bit of a media storm around, on Facebook or wherever you you send these things out to, so people know that on September 20th, all over the globe, we're pausing for our children and for the future and having a global climate strike. And there's information about that back there. If you have any feedback about things that could happen around service Sunday, let us know. And lastly, at 3:30, some of us, if the weather's permitting, we're going to gather and carpool and go show our LGBTQ plus pride. There is no Pride Parade this year, but there's the Magic Festival at Warner Park, so you can join us. And if anyone's interested in keeping the compost tradition going at FUS, yes, yes, let's make dirt, not landfill, right? Join with Bob Radford, who's been the compost king for a long time, Mr. Compost himself. He's going to help us think beyond. Thank you for indulging me all this time. It's so great to be here with all of you. Have a great service Sunday.
Thank you, Timothy. May we take just a moment together in worship to turn our hearts and minds to the cares of the congregation. We join every week as a community who gathers with joys and sorrows that are written on our hearts. And in this place where we know that we are loved and love and give and receive in return, we come together every week in order to find common strength and purpose. We turn our minds and our hearts toward one another and build together a circle of concern for all who need our love and support. For just a moment, I invite you to think about your own life and the life of those that you love, the life of people that you know in this community and in the larger community. For a moment, may we be quiet together. And in that time, I will light a candle to represent those joys and concerns that we each hold in our hearts and minds. I invite you to take a moment to hold those thoughts, to see how you might be called to serve one another in greater love and compassion. May we be together for just a thoughtful moment of silence. For all the joys and sorrows, those shared and those yet too tender to share. May we remember that we are part of a web of life that makes us one with all humanity, one with the universe. May we be grateful for the miracle of the life that we share and the hope given to us by our power to care, to remember, to love. May it be on this day and in the days to come. Amen, and blessed be. I invite you to rise in all the ways that we do and join our voices together in our hymn number 303, We Are the Earth, Upright and Proud.
We are
Indeed, our day is just beginning. In all the ways that we are called to live the truth of deeper community guided by equity and justice, may we begin by deep honesty, deep love, and be called ever to greater truth. We may extinguish the chalice, but not the light of that truth, not the fire of our commitment to making that truth alive in our world, not the warmth of compassion that will humanize it again and again. So may it be. Amen, and blessed be. I invite you to take your seat and join together in one other sharing of music before we move into our day.